Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everyone. And again, I'm always excited to partner with TechWell. That's not my first webinar, but I'm really happy to be here with you guys today. And hopefully, not just enlighten you with some trends and things that are going on in the testing landscape and what's coming, but also to save you some time, as mentioned here in that slide. Plenty of reports are out there, including Perfecto's reports on the state of test automation, where it's heading, what's trending, what's not. So what we have done in this webinar, we have collected every meaningful test automation report, the state of testing in DevOps, and kind of gathered all the insights and what they mean for you. So again, you don't need to do so yourself. As mentioned, my name is Aaron Kinsbunner. I'm a chief evangelist and part of the product team at Perfecto by Perforce, blogger, speaker, author of these 3 books, available on social, my own personal blog. So feel free to engage during this event, after the event. I'm happy to connect with any one of you in all different channels. So again, excited to be here with you. What I decided to do today is divide the webinar because, again, there were so many reports and there are so many trends and things that you need to know about over the past 6 to 8 months. So I've divided the agenda today, starting with the top testing challenges and trends for 2021, how and when the teams are testing, within the cycle, outside of the cycle, within CI or outside of CI, and why is that important? Some takeaways, benchmarks of the market, where the majority of the market stands today when it comes to test automation maturity, and also some recommendations on what to look at going forward, because there are a lot of things that are happening in our landscape today, specifically in the mobile and desktop web test automation perspective. So I'll hopefully leave enough time for a live demo, which in my mind will actually connect all of the things in this report into a single live demo that you can all learn from. As mentioned by Sarah, any questions that you might have, feel free to ask them during this session or follow up with us afterwards. So for those of you who have a much busier schedule, the aggregated key takeaways that I've learned from reading the majority of the reports are the following. I won't read all the different, small letters, but in general, the key takeaways that we are learning is that obviously teams are focused on automating more, meaning more coverage within the cycle, shifting tests earlier. And when I'm talking about coverage, it's not just about coverage from test scenarios, but also covering more platforms. What 2020 have taught all of us is that the world is fully digital today. Some of the organization actually transitioned overnight to be digital because of the pandemic, which means that now more than ever, most of the mobile and web assets, channels must operate, function, and perform flawlessly across so many different permutations of mobile and desktop web. And this is becoming a top of mind for many IT managers, CIOs, and other management within the DevOps team looking at 2021. So coverage and better automation obviously is top of mind. Second is, again, when you have a good and strong automation, obviously you can shift it left to be within your CI/CD pipeline. When you have a flaky, unstable, and unreliable test automation, which covers very little, shifting it left doesn't really benefit you much. So I would say that the first and the second bullet kind of carry one each other. So when you have a good automation, you can shift it left, and I think it's clear enough. And it was very clear throughout the major reports that were released to the market in 2020. Top performance that we have also interviewed over the past year are addressing automation skill set. Okay, we know that there is a barrier. We're talking about squad teams. We're talking about different personas like business testers, SDETs, developers, and each and every persona has their own unique skill set and comfort zones when it comes to test automation frameworks. So top performers are actually mixing and matching technologies to really fit their different personas, and by that they're actually addressing the top two bullets in my slide. When you have more personas involved and responsible for quality across different technologies, it doesn't matter. You can automate much more, you gain more coverage, and then when you automate more, you can shift it left and release faster to market. In addition, we also learned that DevOps is often differentiated. And what it means by that is that we are looking at different criteria for why people are adopting DevOps. Some of them are looking at having a much more rapid release frequency. Others are looking at fully automated CI/CD pipeline, automation. And the third criteria for DevOps was ability to promote or demote releases frequently, especially when you're in the digital landscape. The ability to control disable, enable features by flags and stuff like that, but with confidence, is definitely a great advantage for DevOps leaders. So these were all three main criteria that were popping up in most reports that we have examined. Next, democratizing quality assurance across the entire organization is a key, and this again was across all different reports. If quality is not top of mind for each and every practitioner in the DevOps squad, the feature teams, PM, POs, everyone that is responsible for software development and delivery, it won't work. Okay, DevOps is very clear to everyone, and there are a few goals of DevOps that I mentioned earlier, but if it's not with high quality, everything breaks, because the devs guys might say, okay, I don't care about quality, but if something slips into production, as a defect, a hot fix or something like that, it will come to harm them inside their next feature or sprint. So it needs to be very fully synchronized, and quality needs to be top of mind for everyone. Again, it was also a key point that came up in most of the reports. And last but not least, tying back to the previous bullet about what DevOps kind of is by what the DevOps criteria is being driven by, we looked at the following shift left features, and we talked about feature flags earlier, and actually there are technologies already in the mobile space, including APKs for Android, that actually supports the demotion and promotion of features by feature flags and stuff like that. A/B testing and obviously cloud-based testing are things from a practice perspective that are supporting this shift left in DevOps overall method and maturity. So these are, the key takeaways that we saw time after time in most of the software test automation survey reports, whatever names that they appeared in the market. So now let's look at the top challenges and drill a bit down into which challenges are people complaining mostly about. And as you can see, there are a few, okay? And I've decided to list all of them because I think that when you talk to a specific customer, quality is a moment in time, and for specific customers, some or a mix of these challenges are the most painful. In some days, in some times, in specific products within a specific organization, other challenges are top of mind. At the end of the day, when quality drives DevOps, you can actually address many of these common challenges that we saw. I won't read to you, you can read by yourself. I won't read all of these things, but if to just click on one or two of them, obviously, we talked earlier about the coverage and having more automation in place to enable shift left. You can see here, many complain about too many manual test cases. And the manual test cases is not because always the skill set. It's sometimes because of the siloed manner of teams being built. Within the organization, you have automation team that gets the build thrown to them from developers. They are not part of the sprint, part of the design of the feature, and they are coming late to automate scripts for a specific release. And obviously, they are not making it in time, which leaves a lot of manual test cases and a backlog of test automation from one release to the other. And this is obviously a huge risk for DevOps maturity. Automating advanced scenarios. This is something very specific to the mobile and also web, because web today is not just web, it's responsive, it's progressive. Automating advanced scenarios also drives a lot of manual activities. Sometimes you either don't know that you can automate things, sometimes you don't want to invest in automation because you're afraid that the test cases won't be that robust. Okay, there are many reasons to that, but at the end of the day, when you're just going with the easy path of automating the trivial test cases and leaving the complex ones either manual or later in the cycle, in most cases, this leads to escape defects to production. So, we are no longer in this comfort zone in DevOps. You need to really start dealing with the advanced and the more complex scenarios, and there are ways to deal with them through AI machine learning, different frameworks, a mix of different tools and frameworks, maybe improving skill set within the organization, but not automating because this is complex. Obviously, it's a challenge, but it's not an excuse. Okay, there are also other things that come up almost every year, and unfortunately they are still relevant. The test flakiness, the skill set match, and also setting up and maintaining a test environment. So these are the aggregated software testing and test automation challenges that everyone is complaining against. I do hope that you have as little as challenges from this slide. If you have more, hopefully after this session, at least you'll get some ideas on how to address some of them. When you look ahead and you look at the surveys that were popping up in 2020 towards the end of 2020, we have seen that there is a growth and advanced frameworks that people are looking at, starting from Cypress, Flutter, and Playwright specifically. Cypress is a JavaScript front-end framework tapping into the development space, but also we see a lot of SDETs starting to ramp up with Cypress.io. Perfecto is also releasing its Cypress support pretty soon. We see the demand. Playwright from the ex-guys of Google Puppeteer, now part of Microsoft, are advancing their Playwright headless browser testing framework. I strongly recommend that you also look into Playwright if you're into headless testing. And Flutter, also from Google, is emerging as a cross-platform for mobile and web development as well as testing. If you remember, in the old days, there was Xamarin. Flutter is kind of the modern Xamarin of the world, and it's becoming more and more mature. Codeless, I will speak a bit about it towards the end of this webinar, but codeless or scriptless solutions are also emerging to really expand the test automation coverage and also address the skill set of business testers that are not really doing a lot of coding, and this can actually help them do more automation and move forward in this maturity curve. We have seen also technologies such as PWAs, foldables, and 5G that are emerging. AI machine learning, everyone is talking about it, but just to talk a bit about PWAs and foldable phones. Foldable phones right now are mostly Android, and we are looking at 2022, 1 year from today, where Apple might almost sure, I don't want to commit on behalf of Apple, but they mostly are going to also release a new foldable to the market. But I would say a quite amount of responders really are starting to look at the Android foldable devices. If you are one of them in the audience and you're interested in best practices on testing foldables, you can address me. I've written quite a lot of stuff about how to test this kind of smartphones, as well as, by the way, for Progressive. So Progressive is a mature, responsive web application, if you like, that is fitting the mobile devices as a link without really the need to go through the app stores, and you get a lot of mobile-like features on your web application written in JavaScript, if you like. Again, I can provide you a lot of good information if you're interested on how to address progressive web, how to test them, how to do automation on progressive web applications. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out to me as well. Takeaways for the different personas. So what we have learned is the following. So we have learned from one of the surveys that came out recently. I think it was the first ever survey created by the Selenium dev community, and they actually looked at the most requested improvements, features. Selenium is right now in the Selenium 4 beta milestone. Hopefully the GA will come later in 2021. But what people actually asked on the Selenium survey was to see this kind of features being implemented, addressing flakiness. Either it's because of the element locators or the framework itself or the browser. WebDriver protocol, it can be many reasons. Some of them actually ask for shadow DOMs, working with elements in a much more easy way. Others were just talking about a better framework, which can mean many things from a creation standpoint, from reporting and analysis, and stuff like that. The only thing that actually surprised me was that 15%, 1/5, actually complain on documentation. And for such a mature framework, which has been in the market for almost 20 years, I think that there is so much knowledge, including in the Perfecto website, about what is Selenium, how to use Selenium, code samples in Git and many other repositories. So I was a bit surprised to see so many people complaining about documentation with Selenium, but it is what it is. That was the survey that was published by the Selenium organization, a community, if you like. Obviously, the top most used language in that survey, this is fully dedicated to the Selenium survey, and I thought it is interesting, so I'm featuring it here in the webinar. So Java was the most used language binding within Selenium, followed by Python. Python is showing a very strong adoption by SDETs and test automation engineers. So it actually even passed the JavaScript language from an adoption perspective. So if you look at the 3 top languages used by Selenium developers today, we're talking about Java, Python, and JavaScript. Okay. Google Chrome, surprisingly, is the leading browser that people test on with Selenium, followed by Firefox. Microsoft Edge, by the way, it's kind of a tricky thing because Microsoft Edge is being built on the Chromium open source project. So actually, there is a lot of overlap between testing on Chrome and Microsoft Edge these days. But still, if you look at the old IE market share, by having the Chromium inside the Microsoft Edge, you see that Edge actually got a boost on the market adoption perspective, and even surpassed the Safari from Apple. You can see other mobile browser statistics, obviously Firefox on Android, which is exciting, and obviously Chrome on all the Android devices. So I think this is a very cool survey that Selenium actually created, and I was happy to share it with you guys. So what kind of test documentation testers are creating in 2020? Okay, these are the most significant artifacts that testers are being required or suggesting to create as part of their daily work. Obviously, the traditional test reports and dashboard, the test plans, and by the way, test plan is I wouldn't say a dying term, but it's definitely something that is very specific for verticals, industries, and projects of large sizes. When you're talking about a small feature, writing a full-blown test plan doesn't really make sense. So when you're talking about test plan, you also need to put it in the right context. Checklist is always important, having the right criteria so you can measure and also improve. This is important, and it's also part of the documentation that testers are creating. Mind maps is a very good tool. I've been using it as well, and it's very helpful for you to map everything that you want to either to cover, address all the business flows. So mind maps is a very powerful tool for testers, and also, by the way, product managers and developers. Bug reports is a painful thing. You created a lot, but how good you are creating the bug reports at the end of the day is what matters the most, because if the bug report isn't good enough, doesn't include all the right information, obviously it's not going to be addressed properly by the developers. From a technology standpoint, these are the top used frameworks. I spoke a bit about Selenium and Cypress, and also Playwright and Flutter, but there is a standardization in the market from a mobile and desktop web perspective. Cypress and Selenium are going hand in hand, and one of them actually complements each other. On the mobile front, we are seeing XUI Test, Appium, Espresso, and XUI Test, Appium, and Espresso leading. Flutter is kind of pushing from behind. I think that 2021, or at least the second half of 2021, will be the year where Flutter will see a bit more adoption, because it's still premature, it's growing, and it's also need to catch a lot of gaps that Appium as a cross-platform framework already closed over the past few years. So it takes time for a framework to really replace another, or actually even be on par with each other's. And this is where Flutter is today. I think, again, throughout this year and maybe also next year, Flutter will become more dominant in the industry. Some more things, again, some more charts, which in my mind were important around the reasons for building your own test automation frameworks. We are seeing that, and we see it in many of the Perfecto customer base as well. Perfecto is the leader in BDD test automation frameworks. We have been behind the Quantum open source framework for both mobile and web, and we are serving clients with Quantum BDD just where, exactly when you see here, we want to customize the framework to our own test demands. Costs are more affordable. We have sufficient skills and resources to do so, etc. So there are reasons to either adopt something from the market or create or take something and customize it on your own. And we are seeing the mix within different organizations from different reasons. So it was also something that was featured in so many reports. Again, in my mind, when you talk about the previous slides that shows you, the Selenium and Appium of the world and Espresso and XCUI test and stuff like that, these are all great frameworks. But if you're lacking a specific capability that is slowing you down, this is where we see a lot of SDETs and test automation architects actually building their own test frameworks to close existing gaps. Okay. Sometimes it's also about the price. In most cases, because we're dealing with open source that is ruling in the world, it won't be the price. The price might be the price to create these additional capabilities on top of open source. Okay, that's mostly the price element in these conversations. So how do practitioners learn testing and enhance their skill set? So doing it by example, doing the testing themselves and learning. Books, I know a bit about books myself, so hopefully I'm contributing to some of you guys online by writing every now and then a new book that provides some best practices and insights. So conferences, even these kind of conferences, live webinars that people participate in, allows practitioners to really enhance their skill set. And by the way, spending these 45 minutes with TechWell and Perfecto is really, and I'm not a Geico commercial, I can save you time, right? I'm not saving you here time, I'm saving you knowledge, because learning about all these trends and best practices and stuff like that is a lot of time on your end when you're attending these kind of conferences, meetups, webinars, reading books in your spare time, and actually taking all of this into your practice on your daily work. Obviously, you're becoming a better tester going forward. So I hope that, these kind of things we are at least contributing today in the third element in this slide. Test automation benchmark. So what we have learned, where is the market today? The market today, is roughly at 39% of the organization doing a weekly cycle, with almost the same doing a monthly cycle. In my mind, it's not such a bad number. It's not such a bad average number to be in. But, when these organizations are claiming to have a 39% of them saying that they have a weekly release cadence, what is actually being included in this weekly release? That's the big question, because when I am interviewing these organizations, you suddenly find out, yeah, we didn't have time to do X, Y, Z because it's not automated, right? It came out also in the challenger slide. So if you're releasing weekly, but you're not really covering all the things that you want to cover to reduce risks, such as non-functional performance testing, accessibility, user experience, more platforms, more regression, and stuff like that. So yes, we are releasing on a weekly basis, but how good is this release? I would love to get, the correlation between the 39 weekly releases, the responders, and the quality of these releases. And if, if it's good and if it meets their criteria, it's fine. Unfortunately, we see that this is not really the case. So people are really stretching themselves to release in a short amount of time, but often compromises on quality. Where does testing fit? You see it here. So 71% are actually only starting to test after a new build is ready. Okay, no one is really testing earlier in the cycle, and this is, the basic of shift left. Okay, if you can shift left testing, if you can include as many of your automated test cases in the BAT, in the build acceptance testing, you won't see this testing, most of the testing happening after the new build is ready. You're actually getting the build already after it underwent a significant amount of testing. So obviously, if we can get at least, 20% less responders in this bucket in 2021, this will be a good good advancement in the market. But right now, shift left is simply, in my mind, kind of broken for many of the organizations. And we see it here, right? 33% of the industry automates between 25 to 50%. So if you're automating, let's look at the good case scenario. If you are automating 50% of your test cases and you are releasing weekly, where is the other 50%? Okay, if you are doing it manually, I don't know when you are starting and how much tests are in the manual suites, but these numbers and the previous cycle or the previous slide responses are not well aligned, which means we have a problem here. So I think that, again, to be in a DevOps shift left CI/CD reality, you need to be around 75 to 80% at least automation ready. And automation means you include all of your test cases, not just the ones that are easy for you to automate. Okay. And we see it here, I don't know who built the slide. I guess it's me, because it's easy to connect between the previous trend and this one. And as you can see, only 31% are kind of in the, I would say, that from the walk towards the crawl up until the run, 31% are agile, but still throwing code over to QA and DevOps. This is not real DevOps. And it aligns with the previous challenges as well as the other benchmarks that we have seen. So again, hopefully, a lot of these waterfall, and by the way, waterfall is not a bad term. No one that is doing waterfall today needs to feel bad about himself, because there are a lot of verticals, large enterprises, regulated industries, that waterfall is the only way for them to work. It's okay. In other organizations and other verticals, Agile and DevOps could be reality, but these things are the maturity is being blocked by lack of automation, mismatch between skill set and personas, and other things that we have shown earlier in the slides. Let's move a bit forward. So my friends from PractiTest, Yoel and his team actually released a nice survey, state of test automation as well. And what I liked all of the survey, outcomes or insights, but I decided to take only this one because in my mind it's really important. And what are the sources of test information? How do you know what to test? How you build your test cases? And the majority are using either post-experience in other testing projects, or the main majority are using the user stories. But here is the point. If you have good user stories coming from your product owner that you can build on top of them, either with BDD features and scenarios, you're in a good place. And obviously almost 80% are leveraging the user stories. The main problem that we see in the previous surveys and state of testing reports is that the user stories aren't either of high quality. People don't have enough time to write the user stories, so they're actually writing poor user stories, and a lot of the things are unclear to the testers, whether they are manual testers or automation tester. It doesn't really matter if the user stories aren't well written. Okay, obviously this is not something that you want to see so much percentage. You don't want to know what to test after you release something and you get the bugs from customers, but obviously 65% from different segments of the industry reported they are getting a lot of regressions and escape defects from production, and this is one of their sources to build new regression test cases. Obviously, you want to see less than 10%, in the good scenario. So there is a lot of room for improvement in this case. So there's a lot of things here that, in my mind, if you aggregate all of these sources and you can come up with a nice strategy of how to create the best test automation suite or the test plan for your team, regardless if it's a small or large project, I think this is a very beneficial slide for any practitioner today. So I hope you can find some of these things, either that you are doing today, or if you're not doing, you can complement with other ideas from the industry and maybe build additional test cases that you haven't created still. Okay, let's move, because we are already in 2021 and we are 30 minutes ahead in this webinar. So what should you do this year, okay, to be successful, to improve the previous benchmarks, and not be part of the old statistics or the legacy statistics? So obviously, and I mentioned it earlier, you're talking about different personas with different objectives. Once you understand that different personas have different skill sets and different objectives, this is where you can match the technology to these guys. If you are expecting a developer to write tests in, I don't know, Cucumber, I don't think that's going to be his cup of tea. Okay, he's most likely going to work with very super fast frameworks such as Cypress.io if it's web, or Espresso and XUI test if it's mobile. On the other hand, if you are asking the SDETs to do cross-platform test automation and coverage is their main goal, they have a bit more time than the developers. Working with cross-platform like Flutter, Appium, Selenium, WebDriver.io, these frameworks will fit both the skill set of the SDETs and also their objectives. Last but not least, if you look at the manual testers, giving them the low-code, no-code technologies, whether it's Cucumber or Quantum from Perfecto, Testcraft is a codeless, scriptless solution that they can also use to really automate in a record and playback, but very modern way their manual test cases, they will be much more successful. So you want to really match the frameworks, the tool to the persona and their objective. At the end of the day, when you combine everything that you see here on the screen, this is your 80% test automation coverage, but it comes from three different, again, personas, which actually combines all of their quality objectives in a single test automation strategy. So this is one of my recommendations. Do a kind of a validation within your organization. See if you are lacking skills for a specific individual or a team, and try to really replacing a broken framework for a team doesn't really cost you much. You can actually leverage much more if you transition broken suite to a very new and working one, but that matches the persona. So this is the first, in my mind, recommendation. Second, and I will skip the animation for the sake of time, is to obviously start looking into these main trends. Some of them actually came up in last year's report. This year, they're just becoming more and more dominant and relevant, starting with the Apple App Clips that were released in iOS 14. Apple App Clips are kind of a snippet of a native mobile application for iOS devices, which gives you the appetite to install the full native application from the Apple App Store. Okay, you can get the app clips through a link or an NFC tag, consume the app. If you like it, you then go and download the full application. On the other hand, you have the APKs here. The Android APKs is not a trend. It's a mandatory requirement from Google that is going to be enforced after June this year. You have 3 more months if you're an Android developer in this call. You have less than 3 months to convert your Android APK application into an APKs, which is a zip of APKs that allows you to really deploy multiple applications. We talked earlier about the feature flags. So APKs, one of the benefits of that is that you can actually deploy specific apps to specific devices into specific Google Play markets, and also do a force upgrade or recommend an upgrade of an application to deploy a hot fix. Okay, so APKs is a trending technology, but it's also a mandatory requirement from Google, so you don't have much time to really do the conversion. It might, if you don't meet the Google Play criteria, they might really take your app from the Google Play. So this is really important. I mentioned a bit about PWAs and foldables. It's not in the scope of this call. If it is of interest to you guys online, feel free to approach me during this webinar, and I can link you some material that I've created for these two technologies. But obviously, many organizations are already in the PWA transformation. If you want, you can go to ebay.com, twitter.com, instagram.com, and many others. They are all progressive webs. Okay, so it's growing and it's trending. I won't touch a lot about the TIA, the test impact analysis, and having a smart reporting, because I'm going to demonstrate it pretty soon. And I think I mentioned a lot about the frameworks, but adding to this list the Cypress, this is kind of the standardization in the mobile and desktop web application testing. Appium, Espresso, XUI test, Cypress, and Flutter are today the leading technologies for testing both web and mobile applications. what I wanted to actually also provide you, and this is taken from one of my recent meetings. I've just finished, I think, last week, a meeting with a large airline enterprise. And I know that the airlines today are suffering because of the pandemic, but they still have an application and they're still flying their planes. And what I actually discussed with them is how to optimize the test automation coverage and platform coverage in a single strategy. And this is where we landed on. So I wanted to share with you an example of how a very leading, I can't say its name, but a very leading great enterprise in the airline industry is considering its test automation coverage. And it looks at the feature itself. Obviously, you want to log in to your airline application. You want to check for your flight status. These are all the end user scenarios, right? And by the way, all of these scenarios might happen in different locations, in different network conditions. Sometimes they will happen from a desktop web, sometimes from a mobile device, foldable device, even. And these guys care about the performance. Different ages with different restrictions and limitations are driving the importance of accessibility testing as well, okay? And many of these applications today use sensors, right? You log in with your face recognition, you are getting, scanning the image or the barcode of your ticket. Some of you online, myself, may have forgotten what it feels like to really fly anywhere, but these applications do support all of these. So if you prioritize the test automation scenarios, taking into consideration all the different considerations here, location, platforms, network, performance, accessibility, okay, you actually can come up with all these check marks, which consists for you in with a single test automation plan, okay? So you can just wipe the entire table here and put your own vertical, put your own features, and really choose what matters, okay? Maybe security is not important, I doubt, but you might even add additional columns here about the reuse, about which environments you're going to test against, how critical, maybe age differences, maybe different geographies that you are covering in your application. But this is a nice tool, very simple one, to determine which tests are going to be developed, automated, and executed per each regression cycle. And on which devices? So Perfecto is actually releasing on a regular basis what we call the index report. We've just released the latest version is the 12th version of the index, and this really guides you across different geographies which devices and browsers are the most important and people are using. It's not just which devices are being sold across the different geographies, which devices are being used the most, and this obviously can allow you to build I don't like to say device farm, but kind of a device lab and maybe also a browser lab based on real data, real market data. And this is something that you can be very strategic about by utilizing this report. It's free, so I put here, you have the slide. So if you want to download it, it's free. You can download it here and see if your current web and mobile environments are up to date with where you should be. So this is, again, another word that I wanted to say about coverage. And now, in the time that we have prior to the Q&A, I wanted to show you, as I promised, a demo, okay? So what I'm going to do right now is try the wonders of sharing screen. And I think I should be able to share now my screen. And what I'm going to show you, I have a very simple demo, okay? It's written in Selenium in Java, connecting to the Perfecto cloud, running at scale across so many different environments. Let's see if I can actually even increase the font. I think that you can see now most of the code here. But basically, this example goes and tests across, look at how many environments, the Samsung Galaxy S9, these are all real devices. Galaxy Note 10, iPhone 7, iPhone 11, different browsers, Chrome 83, Chrome latest -1, latest -2, Internet Explorer 11, Firefox, and so many different browsers. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go against one of my clouds to the Boston Globe website, and I'm going to try to subscribe to a monthly delivery of their service in their website. And the reason I'm doing it across so many platforms because the Boston Globe is a responsive web application. Okay, this is a responsive web application, which means it needs to work perfectly well across both mobile devices as well as desktop browsers. So I'm going to this URL. This is a standard Selenium script. Okay, I'm entering here the zip code, some different inputs, zip. I'm entering my own. Obviously, these are fake details. You can try them, but it's fake. These are my inputs. I'm using both element IDs as well as XPath, but these are all robust element identifiers, which means that the script should be running quite smooth. This is a Maven project driven by TestNG. So here in the TestNG, I'm running the class name, which you see here in Java, the test on delivery, across all of these permutations, the Galaxy Note 10, iPhone 7, etc., etc. So the only thing that I need to do right now is actually click on run on my TestNG, okay? And as soon as I'm doing that, hopefully, ignore the few exceptions that you're going to see right now. I haven't seen any Java project that runs without any exceptions, but at the end of the day, it's going to start running on my cloud, and I'm going to now go to my browser. Hopefully, you can see it. One second, I want to log into with a different user. Okay, so now I'm logged in. You see my email. I'm logged in with my own user, and I'm going to go to the live stream. Okay, in the live stream, I'm going to look at the videos, and I'm going to filter only by my name, Eran K. You already see the speed here. You see that the Boston Globe is running on both desktop permutations. It's so fast. So you can see that it's inputting a lot of data here. It's running on different browsers, the mobile devices as well. Some of them already have been completed by the time I actually launched this live stream. But what you're seeing here is the connection between the IDE and a cloud-based environment that runs all the tests as a grid in the cloud across both mobile and desktop web. Now, after the execution was completed, you can see that it's February 24. It's exactly the right time. So I can go and actually try doing something like that. I can go and select the Boston Globe test that was running on the Beta 87. Okay, let's see. I can go and test and check on IE 11 and maybe let's see the Galaxy Note 10. Let's take one mobile device, and actually I can do a comparison between all of these devices. Okay, I can. Sorry, I click on the report itself. I will soon go to the comparison, but basically you can see here all of the different steps that were executed across each platform are automatically being populated into the report library in this tab. Okay, you get all the screenshots, all the elements, all the different calls and validations in a single report, in a single environment. If you want, you can go to the top of the report and you can click on the video, which is also synchronized, and you can actually see the video recording going to the Boston Globe and entering all the different details into the browser. Okay, in this case, it was again Windows 10 with Beta 87, with Firefox Beta 87. What you also can see here that I added my own tagging to this report. So you actually I can filter. I can go to the report library and I can slice and dice and group by different tagging. And this allows me to really see the state of my environment, the state of my testing. If we are already in the platform, in the Perfecto platform, you have seen the live stream, you've seen the report library with the artifacts. You can also notice that we have a heat map here, which you can actually easily find all the failures, all the red marks in your report, and actually avoid wasting time on the greens, because the greens are obviously good. You can easily see that you have some issues with the Galaxy S10e and the Pixel 5, and you can go to the specific report. So that's the heat map. If you are running from a CI dashboard, okay, you can actually see in the CI dashboard also the health of your pipeline and the length of each build, how much it took, if it's trending up, down, if it's stable or not. This is really good and important information for you to have. It might be that you are either under resource from your testing perspective, etc. So getting the pipeline health is also very important. Last but not least is the manual testing. So the platform itself is obviously an automation and reporting, as I've shown you, but we also can see that you can do a lot of manual testing. In the previous report, we have seen that there are so many manual testing happening. You can see here all of these devices, virtual and real devices in Perfecto, are connected to the cloud. And let's say I can pick, hopefully I'm not stepping on anyone, that's a demo shared cloud, but I can go to the iPhone 11 Pro Max on that cloud, and I can open, I don't know, another Pixel device, okay, in parallel, and do some manual testing. So when the iPhone 11 is being loaded, this is a stream to a real iPhone device, okay? I can click on the information. You can see that this device is located in Germany. We have obviously 11 data centers around the globe, so each device can be in different location, running legacy as well as new operating systems. And on this device, you can do anything that you can think of. You can swipe, you can do phone calls, text messages, you can inject image, you can test for biometrics, you can change the network conditions to be poor or good, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. And you can also inject a location. I can actually, this device is now in Germany. I might be able to inject a location that is the Australian Zoo, okay? So I can actually make this device think that it's in a different geography, and if it's a context-driven application and something will pop up when I move from one geography to the next, this is how I will test it very easily. There are a lot of other usability features like the dev tunnel, so you can connect to your IDE from a real device. We have visual analysis here. You have also an object spy. The object spy allows you to really get the access to the objects of your mobile native application. And this is the segue to automation. You can see the XUI element of the weather application. You can copy this element to your Appium script and really save time here. So this is from a mobile standpoint perspective. This is, again, exactly the same features are supported on Android. This is the Android real device. This is the Pixel 3 device. Last but not least is also the web. So you can actually do a lot of manual testing also on web across the different platforms. So I can actually open a Chrome 88 in maybe US East, not Australia or Germany. And here you can actually get a VM very fast, and you can test manually either the Boston Globe website or your other web desktop application very easily without really the need of IT resources to set it up for you. So once the VM is loaded, once the new browser is being created, we can do some manual testing like it was, on your own desktop, interacting with the dev tools of Chrome and doing other related manual activities on the virtual machine. So we'll wait just for a few more seconds for the VM to load, but you're getting the picture. This is how a web VM would look like. You see here all the access, to the tools of the browser. It's like any browser that you would use locally, but you're getting it as part of the cloud from Perfecto. I can go, to google.com. I can browse. I can do whatever testing that I want within this cloud. So this is, in a nutshell. We have other features, of course, but this is in a nutshell the platform itself and how the demo looks like of the platform, including the automation. I will stop sharing now and go back to the slide. And I think I'm exactly in time, leaving 10 minutes, which I hope is enough for you guys online to ask any questions that you might have. So I'll give it to you, Sarah, and the team to address any questions.
Great. We actually have quite a few questions that have come in. Starting with, you mentioned that Flutter is third on frameworks to use. You mean using Flutter to automation test on apps development?
Yes. So Flutter is a Google built environment tool stack, and it's not just for testing. Flutter is a single code base that you can develop with across mobile and web. You can write one code with Flutter in a language called Dart, and this code can be deployed into applications running on mobile devices and desktop web applications. So it's kind of a cross-platform environment or SDK to build digital apps. Flutter also comes with a Flutter driver, okay, like the Appium driver. So Flutter has its own driver that can connect and communicate with browsers and mobile devices to do the testing. The only limitation right now that Flutter has is that it can only test in the context of the app itself, especially on mobile. So let's say you are building a Dart-based mobile application, let's say, I don't know, a weather application. You can only test on the weather application with Flutter. You cannot test incoming events, pop-ups, do things outside of the app on the devices. Okay, so this is something that Flutter is still kind of maturing into. It's currently testing only within the context of the app, but yeah, Flutter is both the framework to build the app as well as to test the app.
Great. Let's see what's next. Where did Amazon Device Farm end up in your survey?
Good question. So Amazon Device Farm, which also, by the way, they have also a browser farm. The Device Farm from Amazon is, by the way, it's an acquisition from several years ago that was embedded into AWS. Honestly, it didn't came up. We have seen many times in the surveys Source Labs and Browser Stack. Okay, sometimes we have seen Catalan. We didn't see that much of AWS Device Farm. Obviously, it's Amazon and they have their own device farm. It's embedded into IDEs, but this is not a competitive discussion, so I won't say what I know about this solution. But honestly, it didn't came up strong in any of the surveys. As I mentioned, the previous vendors came up stronger than AWS.
Great. Looks like we have a couple people who've asked you to expand on the codeless automation tools.
Yeah, that's a good question, a good topic. So I think I mentioned earlier, the different personas, and it's not a trend anymore. It's a reality. I can name dozens of vendors today that are deployed, maturing their existing. My honest preference is not to call these tools codeless. I would call them scriptless. Okay. When I mention a lot of the times to practitioners the word codeless, people kind of go back to the 90s and think about QTP, the record and playback solution. So I'm trying to differentiate the new modern AI-driven tools and the new ones. And the new ones are baked with AI and machine learning. And the AI machine learning in scriptless is mostly in order to stabilize the element location. So you actually, if you got a button changing or moving, changes of color on your website or mobile application, the tool will know how to self-heal itself. So we are seeing, and Perfecto is within Perforce, we also have Testcraft. Testcraft is a scriptless solution exactly addressing this specific point, building without writing a single line of code your Selenium-based application or scripts to test your website. So with Testcraft, you can do a recording of a robust AI-driven scenario that goes to, I don't know, CNN.com, do whatever actions. Underneath scriptless, you have Selenium commands. Everything is driving the Selenium WebDriver commands, so it's fully compliant. But from a skill set perspective, you don't need to write lines in code in Java, JavaScript, or Python, and the other languages. So we can explore about that if you like. If there is a specific person on the call that wants to learn more about how it works, and even maybe get a demo of one of the solutions that we have on scriptless, I'll be happy to talk with you after this webinar.
Okay, great. Lewis is asking, did requirements traceability matrix come up as a testing document during your survey?
Great question. Honestly, I think I just shared, if someone is following me on LinkedIn, you can see that I've actually shared a blog just about that quite recently, because test plan and test traceability is a very critical thing. But if you look at today's reality, and I'm not talking about the regulated industries, the embedded software, I'm talking about the modern enterprise software, digital apps, these guys are using Jira. Okay, so Jira is 90% of the market uses Jira today to write user stories and trace them to requirements, to test results, to defects. It's kind of a all-in-one in Jira. When you're dealing with more complex projects, with enterprises that are targeting embedded software in the automotive space, aerospace, healthcare, and other regulated industries, over there, it's not just a necessity to really make sure that from a safety, you're not missing any requirements and you have the right traceability, but it's actually a mandatory for your audit. You need to prove to, I don't know, FDA and other regulated industries that you actually conducted all these verifications and validations, and this is where traceability comes stronger. In the the majority of the market and the ones that actually I'm seeing on a daily basis, these guys are good enough to use Jira for defect and traceability and user story management as it is. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you for that. Stephen is asking, how do you measure how effective the test automation is?
Oh, that's beautiful. So this can be a webinar on its own, actually, this question, because there are so many things to know. Measurement of test automation doesn't start at the end, okay? When you're investing in test automation, and investment means you have resources that you're paying them money, you're buying tools for them, to automate. These guys need to have the criteria and the measurements up front before they actually start writing, so you can actually measure upon what they've done up until this moment in time. So I hope that you have these criteria defined earlier. If you have them, the question is done, because you had this criteria up in front, and you just validate based on the numbers. How many test cases were automated, how many of them passed, failed, how many escape defects, how many advanced test scenarios, how many flaky tests you had, how many broken builds due to your testing you had. There are many metrics and KPIs that you can put that can measure the success of test automation. But from my perspective, measuring test automation with all these metrics and coverage needs to come in the beginning before you start your project, and then it's just easy to really fill in the blanks and see, okay, I'm doing good or bad based on the outcomes.
Okay, our next question is from Costa. I have seen some organizations have a dedicated centralized automation team that handles everything versus embedding them in each Scrum team. What factors or indicators lend themselves to one or the other? For example, size of enterprise, tech stack, app complexity, etc.
So let me make sure I understand. Costa is asking about the room or the need for a COE, Center of Excellence, kind of a centralized quality organization within a team. What it drives having such a team? Is that the question?
It's a dedicated centralized automation team handling everything versus embedded team in each Scrum. Yeah. What factors might lend themselves to doing it this way or that way?
Good. Okay.
If I'm understanding it correctly.
No, I think it makes sense. So obviously, when you want to shift left and you have embedded teams, like feature teams that have mixed developers and testers, that's the best way to go. In many cases, you still need a centralized team. And when you see large enterprises, that are trying to save cost on tools, licenses, and resources, because honestly, you don't have in each project 100% utilization of both the tools and the resources. Okay, there are peak times and stuff like that. So there are benefits of having a COE, a centralized organization that owns all the licenses for the tools and the entire resources, and it can be very, very dynamic in shifting both licenses and resources to the right teams based on needs. Okay, unfortunately, such organizations are usually moving slower than embedded teams. Embedded teams are always in the know. They know what's coming. They have the access to all the user stories firsthand. They have open communication channels to the developers. In many cases, the COEs are sometimes remote, maybe in different geographies, and this kind of complicates and slows down the overall collaboration between dev and test. So we can have, again, this is a topic for a different webinar if you like, what are the benefits of a COE versus an embedded testing team. But at the end of the day, it depends on what the organization is trying to accomplish. If it's trying to save costs, if it's trying to have a better velocity, depending on the business objectives, you would determine which way to go. But obviously, each direction has its own pros and cons. Some of them I just mentioned earlier. There are obviously much more.
Okay. I see that we're at the 1 hour mark, so we'll make this our last question. If your question didn't get answered live, all of the questions will be forwarded that he can answer them later. So Casey is asking, do these trends fit with smaller teams, i.e. one dev, one tester?
Sure. Again, I mentioned a few trends from different technologies and different domains. So I didn't related the trends to the size of the team. Okay. If the team is right now, let's say, supporting a small organization of developers and they decide to move from responsive to progressive, that's a relevant trend, right? Some of the trends that I mentioned earlier, like APKS, if you're an Android developer, it doesn't matter which team you are. If it's small, if it's even one Android developer, he needs to be compliant with what Google is asking. Otherwise, his app will not be in the Google Play after June of this year. Okay. Test automation frameworks trends. This is, again, it's subject to your objective. If you are using today, let's say, Selenium, and you are happy with Selenium, and you have 85% test automation coverage with no flakiness, by all means, continue using Selenium. But there are alternatives. There is this Cypress trend that is growing that can sometimes complement and advance your velocity. Just so you know, Cypress specifically is running inside the browser. You don't need to have any WebDriver, any grids. You run the test inside the browser, which is much faster, much accurate, and it has also the debugging live update feature, which really assists developers to shift left their testing. So it's a bigger discussion to have, and it depends on, again, your business objectives and also some of the market trends and the industries that you are serving.